Today I'm going to talk to you about the competitive market analysis. So the first thing you need to do when you're doing a competition analysis or an analysis of your competitors is to identify who your competitors are. Many times when we're meeting with our clients, we usually ask, who would you consider a competitor? And they would struggle to name like 2-3 names, and most probably they're like direct competitors competing within the same area or within the same region that the client that we're meeting with operating in. We will talk about how to identify your competitors, and without limiting them to those who are within the region or the location that you're serving in. But generally speaking, how can you identify competitors? First type of competition is direct competition, and it's mainly very straightforward. It's when two companies or more are offering the same product or service to the same target audience and in the same market. So a clear example, or some of the classic examples of direct competition would be McDonald's versus Burger King, maybe Samsung Galaxy versus iPhone, Apple's iPhone, Coke versus Pepsi. These are all classic examples of direct competition. Another example of direct competition is, let's say you're a pizza restaurant in Belfast, then your direct competitors would be all pizza restaurants in Belfast. To understand what indirect competition is, we can continue or build on that example of the pizza restaurant in Belfast. We can say that your indirect competitors would be all the restaurants in Belfast and not just pizza restaurants. Because think of it as a customer. When you're hungry and you're thinking of what kind of food you should eat, you're not only considering one category of food, you're considering maybe Chinese versus burger versus pizza versus maybe international cuisine. So it's not really that you're just considering one option to satisfy your hunger. So all these businesses are catering for the same need, even if they do provide different products. To put that more clearly, indirect competition is when businesses are offering different products, but they are catering for the same need or satisfying the same need for a customer. So an example of that is maybe you're thinking Pepsi versus Coke, but sometimes you're thinking Pepsi versus water or Pepsi versus juice. So even though Pepsi doesn't really produce juice, but Pepsi is competing with those companies that produce juice or even water. This idea can be applied to many different things. Tea and coffee compete against each other when it comes to satisfying thirst, or maybe something as an energy booster. Maybe cell phone and the landline also competed with each other because they cater for the same need, which is to communicate or easily communicate with someone. And that's also the same for, let's say, Kindle versus printed books. So again, the goal here is to read the book, but it could be different products, but they're still a substitution for each other or indirect competitors. The last type of competition is similar products or similar product competition. And this is quite interesting because it's usually an inspiration for new innovations, and they're good to observe if you're trying to grow your product portfolio or you're extending some of your product or your brands. Similar products are products that perform similar functions, but they are used in distinct contexts or for different purposes, if we may say so. So, for example, cars, ships, and airplanes, they all function, or they all have the same function, which is getting people from point A to point B. But they are completely different, and they're used in different contexts. But it's very important to keep an eye on similar products, because they can be maybe later in the future combined into one, or they can be used for a completely different purpose. And we've seen that happen with the internet or the GPS, because these things, when they emerged, they first started as military tools and they were not available to the public, but then later it became a completely different context that they're used for. So it's very important to keep an eye on similar functions, but that are used in for different purposes or in different contexts. When you're thinking of your competitors, you should always consider the bigger picture, because even though as brand managers or someone who's working on a specific product or brand, you're always thinking of the category as the bigger picture. But in fact, your customers don't think that way. They think, they consider the whole picture and not just your category. So for example, if your iPad's brand manager, your brand competitor is Samsung Galaxy Note, yes, of course, because your customers will be comparing both items against each other. They're both successful brands, they're both offering great features, and they nearly have a similar price. So it's completely natural that people are going to compare that you're going to compare your iPad versus the Samsung Galaxy Note. But don't forget that they're also considering all the cheap laptops out there, the generic competitor, or what we call the generic competitor, which again, your customers are thinking of those as options, even though they are not mainly maybe they don't have the same quality, they don't have the same brand awareness, but they are still your competitors, even if they are generic competitors. Another competitor that you should consider is the total budget competitor, which is, let's say someone wants to buy an iPad as a gift to maybe their kids or their granddaughter or grandson. So they're not only considering iPad as a gift, they're also considering anything of the same budget. It could be a smartwatch, it could be a piece of jewelry. So budget competition is also important, because you need to understand the mentality of your customers who would consider the complete different the many different options that they have, even if it's just according to budget and not product and not brand. So this is also something that you should pay attention to. We've talked about direct competition, indirect competition, similar product competition. We've also touched upon brand competitors, generic competitors, and but total budget competitors. So these are different types of competition that you need to consider when you're identifying your competitors or when you're doing a competitive environment analysis. In the next video, we will talk about when you need to conduct a competitive environment analysis, so stay tuned.